Hello and welcome to the Point. I'm Lalit Mathur, co-founder of DCirrus and a corporate lawyer by profession. I have started this podcast to bring you candid conversation with leaders from law, finance, consulting, and the wider business world. Together, we all explore their journeys, their challenges they faced, the deals they led, the teams they built, and the lessons they learned along the way. The idea is simple: to inspire and guide young professionals, industry experts, and students by sharing real stories, practical insights, and forward looking perspectives from those shaping the future of our industries. It is all about honest, insightful, and engaging discussions that get straight to the point. Today, our guest is Mr. Sivarama Krishnan. He's partner and leader of risk consulting at PwC India and the Asia Pacific leader for cybersecurity. Siva brings with him over 2 decades of experience in risk management, consulting, and cybersecurity, and has played a pivotal role in building new practices at PwC, from digital government to telecom and cybersecurity. Under his leadership, PwC Risk Consulting business has grown manifold, making a real impact in how organizations and governments approach digital transformation and security. Beyond his professional achievements, Siva is deeply interested in philosophy and the Vedas, giving him a unique perspective on leadership and life. In this conversation, we will explore his journey from his education to his entry into the profession, his work at PwC on landmark matters, his leadership philosophy, and his vision for the next generation of professionals.
Thanks, Lalit. It's my
Let us
pleasure.
start and get to know a little more about Sivarama's early life and career foundations. Oh, what was your upbringing like, and what kind of student were you growing?
Thanks, Lalit. I think I was born in Tamil Nadu, about 190 kilometers away from Chennai, a small village called Anangur, which is close to the town Viluppuram. I studied in my rural school, thereafter to the town college, then moved like any other young kid in 80s to study in Chennai for my graduation, and then I followed that with a CMA and CA course. And after 10 years of working in PwC, I felt there's a need for me to study again. So I went after ISB for my executive MBA. So that's my brief education journey, and worked across multiple cities and a few countries too.
You started with a BSc in mathematics at RKM Vivekananda College. What attracted you to that field of study?
You know, in in those days in late 80s, any kid who studied in rural schools, they dreamed to do either engineering or a medical, or else BSc in a science, because science is considered as pivotal to most of the courses. So I did get into a engineering college, a private engineering college. So I visited and I saw one shed, which had 2 years of future engineers studying in a shed. I felt it may not be appropriate for me to study there. So I joined in Vivekananda College to do a master's in mathematics. And of course, I was a little passionate about mathematics in those days. And, Vivekananda College was considered as one of the leading, science college in Chennai, apart from Loyola and Presidency College. So I felt it's more appropriate, and it suited my upbringing too. Having born to a traditional Vedic family, I felt Vivekananda suits my aspirations and the upbringing too. So I went and joined there.
Then you pursued both chartered accountancy and cost accounting, a very demanding path. What
Sure.
motivated you to go that route?
It's accidental. Once you're in a hostel, so, most of the other kids who are in the accounting and the commerce streams all used to do in those days ICWA from the hostel. So my roommates are doing it, and since I was sitting alone and not necessarily pursuing any of those, one of the roommate who saw something in me, and I said, you know what, why don't you also attempt for ICWA? So I thought, okay, it seems to be a new stream of education. Why not? So I started with my ICWA. I cleared within a rank in intermediate, both the groups. So that gave me a confidence. Oh, this is something which I can do well, probably well. So I completed my ICWA during my graduation. So that motivated me to do CA too.
You returned to school mid-career at the Indian School of Business. What prompted that decision, and how did the
Yeah.
experience influence your leadership journey?
I think it's something which many of us in the mid-career pursues. Sometimes most of us, when we start our career, we start as a specialist in a given area of work. So most of us think that what matters is knowledge, especially those who were born in 90s, because there was Indian economy that got opened up. There's a lot of new job opportunities, but what distinguishes you from the rest is your skills and capabilities alone. So that's what our focus used to be. So in the late, mid 2000s, suddenly I realized, oh God, you know what, the technical and the general competence alone is not enough, and you need to have 360-degree view. For instance, most of the chartered accountants don't think about people management skills, and many of us don't think about marketing skills or a product skills, product management skills, and so on and so forth. So you end up in becoming very specialized in the functional heads, and we struggle to move beyond functional head to the CEO. So I felt maybe it's an important area for us to study. Why not MBA? That's when the ISB just started executive MBA course in that year, in 2009. So I just applied. So and the first batch, I got the admission. So I just pursued it. I found it very useful because from being a good professional consultant to be a business leader, you have to think beyond. You need to have strategic thinking capabilities. You need to have people management capabilities. You should have an ability to forecast and willing to take a risk, calculate a risk for a right move, and also willing to shut when it is not needed. Okay, and think about the product and think about how to market it, how to place it right. And those are the kind of skills that I've learned in my executive MBA, which I found really, really useful.
Did you always know you wanted to go into consulting, or did that emerge over time?
I think many kids who start to do CA, they dream to join in those days in Big Six. Now it is Big Four. When I started in 1990, 91, it was a Big Six. Okay, so if you don't get into a Big Six, you always dreamt of getting into a Big Six when you're doing a CA. So when I started my CA, of course, I haven't had any connect or experience and expertise to join in any big firm. So I started with a small firm, not too small, but it's a decent firm at Sharp and Tannen. So I cleared my intermediate. When I cleared my intermediate, of course, I was coming from a rural area to work, you know, in the city. So quite obviously, we were looking for a money too. Articleship used to pay very little, so I ended up in doing industrial training. At DLF, in DLF construction in those days. So I had spent a year and a half. I cleared my CA, and PW then used to be the auditors of DLF, and then the manager who was other side of it working. I used to handle audits for DLF. So PW used to be the auditor. The audit manager asked me, why not try at PW? So obviously it was a dream.
From your education and early career choices, let us move into your professional journey. particularly your time at PwC and your leadership in risk and cybersecurity. You have spent over 2 decades with PwC. What initially drew you to the firm, and what's kept you engaged for so long?
I think, Lalit, I think the generation that we belong to, we are very fortunate. If you really think about it, our earlier generations, most of them have got the least amount of opportunities in the country, and there was a stagnant economy or a slow growing economy. So not necessarily you had enough employment opportunities or the business opportunities in the country. But since 91, when the economic liberation happened, deregulation that have happened, there's a humongous amount of investment that has started flowing into the country. I've seen it personally when I joined in PW in 94. That time, every other day, there would be some investor coming and carrying out due diligence or a market estimate or entry strategy and so on and so forth. Some of us who joined in the firm in audit, in those days, it's the consulting houses are not very big with the multiple divisions. Everything was very small. I was probably 50 or a 60th employee in PW in Delhi. So when I joined, so it's like a small family. So I have seen many large corporates entering into India, and when we started, that attracted me. So from audit, I moved to do a little bit of due diligence. I mean, investor coming into India. For instance, McDowell sold its polymer division to LG Chemicals. I led that for almost a year in the entire transaction to happen. So, when I started that, then a lot of telecom companies start coming into India. Many due diligences of global telcos investing in India was then done by us. So, that time I found, oh, telecom is interesting, exciting. So why not I move into telecom? So from being an auditor to move to deal to telecom, and then from telecom, because I was in telecom, there's a lot of technology. So that technology attracted me. So I moved to technology, and technology led me to start thinking about why not e-business. So I was sent to London on a secondment to do a e-business strategy and security in e-business. That is how I learned a little bit of security then in UK. I came back, dot-com burst happened, and then government has opened up to do a lot of governance in technology, using technology. So in 2002, I started along with my boss, Neil Ratan, the entire e-government practice for a PwC in India. So that led to somewhere. Then like this, so it's like a very enthralling journey that I've had in these 30 years. Every third or fourth year, there's a new set of opportunities that have opened up for me. Of course, I was intellectually curious, interested in exploring and expanding my horizon. That has helped me. So that kept me excited on the work.
What are some of the most persistent misconceptions organizations have about cybersecurity today?
I think there's only one misconception. Anybody and everybody thinks I'm secure. But everything else is a result of those. I think in particular when it comes to cybersecurity, there are challenges. The challenges are that three things. One is, if you have to be secure, you have to be 100% of the time you protect yourself. Okay, whereas any attacker, he just need to succeed with 1 in 1,000,000. He doesn't need to worry about rest of them. That 1 in 1,000,000 makes him very successful, isn't it? Whereas in order for me to protect, every million attacks needs to be protected. I can't have zero failure. So that is the biggest challenge organization face, so as a cybersecurity professionals face. But if you really look at it, the entire attack history, whichever the companies, I mean, if you go down to the path of reading the SEC filings and the case studies of the past attack, primarily there are three fundamental things that gets involved in it. One, there is always a process gap. I mean, without process gap, none of those, the gaps can be fully exploited. Somebody can enter, penetrate, but nobody can exploit unless there are process gaps. Every large attacks, if you find there is a process gaps that was getting exploited. One. Second is that the weakest link of every attack is in some form the end user. In 80s and 70s, you had all these large attacks on the servers, on the data centers, etc. Those are the gone days today. It's about the weakest user in the chain. With that weakest user on the process gap is a potent combination that leads to a vulnerable in events or incidences in a given organization. So that's the second most important thing. The third thing which is important is no attacker comes and penetrate in your organization out of a blue moon. He actually is in the system and waiting. So the day on which he has access or gained access to your system, to the action that he carried out, to leak the data or do a fraudulent transactions, there is a time gap. That time gap is anywhere between 48 days to 3 years. So organizations do get a window of this 48 days to 3 years. Okay. So that is the third. The fourth and last one is the trust. Most of the organization believes that if I know someone, employee, contractor, they are all trustable. So there is a group of trusted access and then untrusted access. That is a theory. Because that person is vulnerable, it means that even though that person can be trusted, the access cannot be trusted. The individual is not equal to accessing event in a computer environment. I mean, I can access, if your password is leaked, I can access as a Lalit Mathur. So you may be trusted, but not Lalit Mathur login ID. That distinction, distinction the organization fails to make. So these are the four major things. While it is not possible for you to 100% of the time to prevent from attacking or accessing your system for millions of times, but you can always minimize and respond faster if you have removed these four theories and making sure that you should know where your process gaps are. You should have zero trust of the accessing ID. You can trust an individual, but not accessing IDs. Okay, not accessing IDs. Okay, and then if you are able to, look at access with the user behaviors, you should be able to get a early warning signals. Okay, lead indicators of attack. That lead indicators of attack can help you to minimize any such events. Okay, so that is potentially possible.
As APAC cybersecurity leader, how do cyber risks in the Asia Pacific region compare with those in the West?
Look, I think there are some positives in India, there are some negatives in India. Let me first address the positive element of it when it comes to this region. Look, unlike in the past where the attacker's interest was to steal data, okay, and largely it could be national security or it could be business espionage and so on and so forth. And there is little economic interest in the past. Today, most of the attacks have very direct economic interest. Okay, and every attacker wants to encash as much as possible. And good thing about Indian situation is because our transactions are distributed in small value and our interest on privacy related leakages are far lower as compared to the Western world, there is a potentially lower demand as compared to the West. Like for example, if somebody collects million user IDs in India or email addresses and phone numbers, it hardly matters because we do have multiple avenues of sharing this, from your visitor entry in the buildings to, any place that you go, we freely share our personal data, exhibitions and information and so on and so forth. So it's very different society. So it has a minimal effect, but it does have a huge impact when it comes to corporate espionage and national security related concerns. I mean, we do know, for instance, in the recent past, every time when there are, events around us, around India, and Indian corporates were attacked. Whether it is during COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID. In some sectors, we are far, far ahead as the leaders who are determining the global supply chain. For example, pharma. 80% of the formulations or medicines, end-user medicines, are getting produced in India. There are large pharma companies whose security, whether they're R&D or manufacturing and others, have got a direct significance for the global supply chain. So that means there is a heightened interest. For example, today the stock exchanges, 98% of the trade today happens online, and probably India is the only country where we have 100% dematized. There is no manual cash transactions. So it means that there is a clear, economic catastrophe if anything happens to our financial market side of it. Okay, today with the e-invoicing that we are seeing, any supply chain within the country, if GST and network goes down, that could have an impact. So we have new areas where we have vulnerabilities because of the concentration of digital processing risks. Okay, we are probably managing far, far better. At the end of the day, unit cost plays a very vital role. I can spend billions and billions of dollars to secure everything, but then the cost versus the benefit also has to justify. And the Indian context, we are doing reasonably well as a nation, and we have a resilience. Even if the attack happens, our ability to recover and bounce back is far, far better than many other countries or global companies that we have seen. So I'm very proud of this in this nation, the way we are handling when it comes to cybersecurity incidences. While always we can have a lot of improvement areas that we should focus on it, but with the limited resources that we have, our ability to digitize and future proof and transact and survive is far, 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 far better than many other countries in this region or across the globe. In 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 fact, Lalit, I mean, I'm not joking. Somewhere or other, we Indians always undermine ourselves. Imagine, our railway reservation system has been operating since 80s. Simplest of all possible system that could have got developed anywhere in the world. Okay, and the cost of transaction on railways were potentially one of the lowest as compared to the rest. It is even today working, I can talk on hours on it, but that's an ingenuity of India where we were able to develop a system that can operate on dial-up mode. No internet. On a dial-up mode, it was working. In a 9-bit communication system, it was working. Okay, that's a system that we developed, and it's even today it is working very well.
Of course, no leadership journey is without its challenges. Let us talk a bit about setbacks, failures, and what they teach us. So, Sivarama, your profile mentioned some initiative that didn't go as planned, like building a product vertical or a client relationship that didn't take off. What did those experiences teach you?
I think there are 3 or 4 things which I've learned myself on it. One is that each one of us have certain base skills. You can build and moderate some of it, but you cannot change completely. Okay. If a person is very good in interpersonal skills, then that person should use that as a base and revolve around moderate to improve his position. Each one of us has got a different skills. So one thing which I have learned is to really identify your core skills, stick around it to move. One. Second, success don't come in shortest span of time. I mean, many times you take up a job or a role where you wanted to succeed. It's like a 2-minute noodle. I mean, we all a Maggie generation. I mean, we have literally become Maggie generation. Today you need to have 10 minutes में delivery, 2 minutes में खाना, 5 minutes में digestion or whatever. Okay. You know, you cannot succeed if you don't allow time to seed. It is like a planting a tree. I mean, most of the effort that you do in a new business is like a planting a tree. And that is not going to grow to become a tree in 1 day, 2 day, or a 3 day. The shortest possible for any tree in a biological history is about 3 years, 2 to 3 years. Any enduring plant that you wanted to have, like coconut tree, start giving after 3 years a coconut. Still, then you have to wait for the 3 years. Okay, and you can have banana tree that gives you 9 months, but that has a very shortest life too. Once it produces, it also goes away. So you have to be aware of it and wait for it to succeed. So the patience is needed. So one is there is no shortcut. Second is that you need to have patience and you have to give a time for it to succeed. A third is that many times when you work in a large organizations, you may feel that you are successful in your initiative, but it is something that you have to sell it to your bosses and your own team and subordinate and peers, because most of the time many decisions that is being taken is not based on what you perceive of what you're doing. It is based on what others perceive of what you're doing, or a success or a failure. So many times you see this going successfully, you are on a right track, and others don't see you're on a right track. Probably you don't communicate, you're not communicated well enough, or if your intents and actions and resultant results of it, so others start differently perceiving it. That kills you too, because they will cut the funds, or they divert the resources, or your own team members are not anymore supporting you, and you stand alone. They start moving in to take up other jobs and so on and so forth. So if you are taking a new initiative, that becomes very vital, where you have to keep convincing your peers and juniors, and also keep convincing your seniors and bosses. So that becomes a tough job, because you get up to start something new. You yourself are struggling to convince yourself, and then but you need to go and convince your juniors, convince the seniors as well, and then at the same time carry out an activity and so on and so forth. That becomes a tough job in many times. I failed in some. I've succeeded in some, because what matters, at least in a partnership firm, in a consulting, is how well are you being supported by the senior partner. That matters a lot, because it's a partnership firm. So some areas I realized I'm not very good in the client relationships. I'm not a relationship partner category, where I can walk into a client every day and then meet and greet, and then build a relationship with the people, and then in long run it start yielding results. Because I need a challenges, inquisitive mind, I need to learn something. So then I realized, oh, client relationship is not my cup of tea. So after 3 or 4 years, I just moved out of it. Whereas, I do still believe that the product business is a viable business. And, in my belief, I have done everything which is needed for the firm to succeed. But not necessarily I was able to convince my peers or my bosses of the same. So it's a sheer shared vision failure. And I will not blame others, because end of the day, if you are a leader, it's your responsibility to create that shared vision with your seniors, with your peers, and with your team. And that's something which I failed. That's the reason I was telling that each one is very different. And the first one is a skill gap or an interest gap. The second one is purely the communication gap. And also the timing, because you can do many things, but it has to be at the right time. You don't succeed by doing early, or you don't succeed by doing late. So timing plays a very vital role. Not that everybody identifies what is the right time. Sometimes, that is something which is the luck. I mean, that's where the destiny matters.
How do you personally process failure, and how should leaders respond to setbacks while maintaining team morale?
One thing which you have to be understood, the success and failure. In fact, I keep writing these days on LinkedIn on using Bhagavad Gita, which I actually strongly believe in it. Look, the success or failure is primarily your perception. What you have a control is your action. What you don't control is outcomes. Okay, any outcome which happens in your action is not yours alone. Because especially in a given organization, I carry out some action, that doesn't mean that that alone yields me a result. The receiver of the actions also has to appreciate it. He also has to be in the same mind. It is like, it's like giving advice. You would like to give an advice only when those who's ready to hear your advice. Otherwise, you don't want to give an advice, isn't it? Similarly, that is where it matters. So it doesn't matter whether you fail or succeed, but your action has to be that 70% passion with the skills to deliver. Because the passion is towards action, not towards the result. Okay, so if you take that as a means, when I started with cybersecurity, nobody thought that in India, Big Four can be in a big way in a cybersecurity, which I'm talking about 2014. I gave up, like 10, 11, 12 partner, I think about 1,500 people size of business to start from the scratch. After 20 years in the firm and being a partner for 10 years, it's very difficult for a partner to give up and restart again from the scratch. So I did it. And then when I did it, everybody thought that it is bound to fail. But we became one of the, leading cybersecurity practice within 3-4 years. And nobody thought that the Big Four can run a managed services. I was the first one to start in the country a managed services for a cybersecurity. Even went, it took a while for me to get a permission from global to get it going. Okay, so we probably is still the leader when it comes to managed security in the country. We manage many Indian enterprises, largest to the brand. We proudly claim that about 70% of the market cap companies in the country for whom we do manage security. Okay, so there is a story. So that's a passion that you carry. So that is something which I always carry forward. When I looked at it, risk, we were the smallest in the country. Probably now we are in the probably second position. We generally Big Four, each one claim it wherever they are, but I was less than 40 partner team, and in less than probably $100 million of revenue, maybe $50 million of revenue, not $100, $50 million of revenue. And what I did is that we went ahead and spoken to a lot of professionals. I brought the professionals together to join us, and we shifted our focus from individual partner driven to the team driven, sectoral driven. We moved the needle, and today probably we have grown 3 times in this period, and also I was able to add about another 65 partner managing directors to the practice, whether internal promotion or external hires in this 3 years time. So that's a because the market is available. Here I don't need to create a market, work hard. I just need to get a team together to focus on the market. This is far easier as compared to cyber, where you have to create a market. You are not known in that space to build something new. So each one requires a very different skills. But it's an interesting journey. I mean, I enjoyed thoroughly. I mean, still enjoying.
Beyond work, I would love to hear more about your philosophy and what inspires you outside the professional world. Outside of your work, you study the Vedas and philosophy. How have these shaped your worldview or approach to leadership?
I do think that there's some of my professional life has that imprint of what I've philosophically learned from Vedas and Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, etc. One thing which I just touched upon it, one big area where most of the professional managers work for and carve for is recognition. Okay, so you end up in doing many things where you wanted to be close to the bosses, close to the senior partners, close to the sector heads or whatever. You are reporting, bosses, etc. And I was fortunate enough to have some of the people to whom I was reporting to, and neither they were expecting me to be taking orders from them, nor I was willing to work with them. That made me very independent. This as a firm that has given me an opportunity, and I also not waited or carved for the recognition or any of this. So that helped me, one, because I personal belief in my mind is that my duty is to carry out my actions. I'm not least bothered about annual evaluations, incomes, ratings, or positions, leaderships, and so on and so forth. Yeah, position, so on and so forth. So, in fact, I do even today, probably I'm the only leader in PwC in India where I drive my business on a collective target, no, not individual targets. So I still do that. My belief is, if you are running a partnership business, the word partnership means trusting each other and means that each one is working towards collective interest, benefit to the collective interest, not individual interests. So I'm a strong believer of that. I follow that to the T. That also comes from there. The second thing which actually makes me to start thinking about is that in many times when you start carrying out an action, and somewhere the other, especially in a consulting organizations, I've seen this even maybe in a corporates as well. We always start thinking about whatever the action before you carry out, what's in it for me question. Then your actions are getting shaped based on your perception of what's in it for you in it. Okay, oh, can it lead me to a next position here? Can it lead me to there and here, etc., etc. Whereas for me, if I really think about it, anything which I do, first thing is it good to a common, whether businesses or clients or the people, etc. Second is it good to the firm? Then comes in, is it good to you? So it is your clients and the people in general first, and then the firm second, you the third. So most of the time, many successful leaders I found the last two is their priority. self is the first, and then the firm, and then they think about the clients or the market. And whereas I do think reverse manner. I mean, my encouragement to our new generation leaders is in particular, what you have to really always think about is that common good will always lead a good things to you too. So anything that you do, you should not be, benefiting by causing disturbances or losses to the common man or a public or your clients, whichever the area that you work on, based on where you are. If you are in FMCG, then it's your customers. If you are in consulting, then it's your client. If you are a product organization in B2B, it is your customers and so on and so forth, partner businesses and so on and so forth. So if you're able to think in that line, you will be able to do that better. That is something which always shapes in my mind. I mean, I have done many things. I walked up to a client and told them, don't hire me. I'm not a right fit for you. I've done it. And then end of the day, clients call me back for something else. They might not have hired for my given job, but something else. Oh, you came and told me this. I appreciate it. Okay. And many times I have gone to a client and say that you give me a scope A. This scope is not going to give you a result that you're expecting. Let's change the scope. I will deliver the expectation. I've done that. I've done that with the clients too, because that's what makes it very simpler. That takes you, sticks you, have a higher stickiness, and then they start appreciating as well.
You also enjoy old music and non-fiction. Any book or song that recently surprisingly resonated with you?
I would not say song, but generally, when you do I mean, these days I only listen to the shlokas and gitas and in the philosophical space. But in the past, I never used to try to understand the meaning. And these days, I go after the meaning behind each of the slokas. And one sloka which hit me hard when I really understood the meaning is from the Bhajagovindam, Adi Shankara's shloka about how you can reach the moksha. There's a one sloka which says that satsangatve nitsangatvam, nitsangatve nirmohatvam, nirmohatve nischaladatvam, nischalachatve jivan mokshaha. We always believe that satsang, we hear the satsang means going out and sitting, attending a prayer, etc., etc. But then if I read that with the objective analysis in the new modern management philosophy of who you are is primarily what you think you are, because you become what you think you are. That's what Gita in 17th chapter, Lord Sri Krishna also says, but the new management philosophy says the same thing, that positive thinking and orientation, outcome results all leads to the same. But one important thing which I have really understood, that the word satsangatvam has got a very deep meaning. Sangatva does not mean that satsang doesn't mean that only going out and listening to some pravachans. Satsang, what you are with, who you are with, what elements you are with. If you imagine at night, if you go to bed and watch a movie before go to sleep, that goes on your head. That's satsang. What you eat makes you to think. That's satsang. What you smell changes your mind. That's satsang. So everything that is attached to you changes you. Now that made me to really think deeper. Okay, your friends makes, I mean, our parents used to say, if anything happens, good or bad to us, the first comment they used to make is that, what are your kind of friends that you have? That's a satsang. So now I start thinking about every association that I have is satsang. Yeah. Satsang.
What people reflect on your contributions years from now? What would you hope they remember you for?
I don't think I expect anybody to remember me as Sivarama Krishnan or anything. But my belief is that whatever I have done, what I've inherited, have I left behind a little bit more better than what I've inherited. That's my attempt. If that is something which has happened with the God's grace, that is good enough. Because if it's all about what the legacy that you're leaving behind, that's what matters. I mean, many people, if you really think about it, I'm just saying as an example, in our society in particular, we had created a social culture, not heroism, not with a heroism, culture with a devotion and submission. Think about it. Isn't it the kings in before 1480s are dads and they're idiots? Such a huge culture that we had, intellectual brain that we had, and we couldn't have written a story about the kings who are ruling the country, or a books or a history. No, but our society did not believe in naming and faming individuals. Our society believed in devotion and leaving behind a legacy for each one. That is why if you see in those days they built temples. Temples are not meant as a worshipping place, religious place. There was no concept of religion in those days. Temple is a core economic activity of a given villages. If you have observed it, even today, if you go to south, you will see it alive. Okay, and they have not built a palaces. They built a temple. When there was rain, people go and took a shelter in the temples. And they left behind grains, taxed grains at the temple. When the villagers wanted, there was a disaster recovery. Needs are fulfilled by the temples to give free food and so on and so forth. So our society is like that. I strongly believe in it. And in my mind, there is no reason for us to think how we need to be remembered. I do want to really think that, okay, I have inherited something. When I leave behind, am I leaving behind better than what I've inherited from my elders? So long as I've done it, I think I'm a very satisfied person.
And we come to the close of our conversation. I would like to leave our audience with some takeaways and ways to stay connected with you. If you could offer one piece of advice to young professionals entering consulting or cybersecurity today, what would it be?
I think the one advice which I can give it to all of them is, unfortunately, our Western education teaches you to count chickens even without eggs. Stop doing it. Stop doing it. Instead, skill yourself and focus and be passionate about what you do. If you consistently do right things all the time, you are assured of a success. But it may not be necessarily each day you can count. In fact, I just wanted to leave behind a message which is, a few years back, along with my senior partner, we had a lunch with one of the entrepreneur in Delhi, and that person very casually asked a question to my senior partner. Do you know what is the biggest difference between a professional and an entrepreneur? So, because he said, look, most of the entrepreneurs make money using professionals because they themselves can't do anything. So, we were debating, discussing, then he smiled and said that only difference is, we look for a long-term wealth. They look for a short-term recognitions. I mean, professionals are happy if I get a title. I give a secretary, I give a cabin, I give a car, I give a title, promotion. They're happy. They do double the effort, triple the effort. So they continuously look for recognition. What we look for is none of it, because nobody needs to recognize me on daily. But in a 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, if they saw me accumulating wealth of lakhs of crores, automatically the whole world will recognize me. But who are a catalyst for that revenue? Those professionals. Somewhere there in our mind, most of the professionals look for short-term recognitions, and count chickens without eggs. And if you're able to keep focusing on skilling yourself and be ready and agile for a change, I think you will succeed. That's the one comment which I can leave behind to most of the professionals. And don't compare with others, because no two persons career would be of the same. It's like driving on a road. Some cars will go ahead of you, some cars will be behind. Somebody may be in Maruti 800, somebody may be in, you know, some better fancy car, Rolls Royce, and so on and so forth. The destination is only one. All of us needs to be comfortably, happily living. So for that, doesn't matter what vehicle you drive. It matters what speed you are interested in going, and then are you reaching the destination. If that happens without enviness, I think you will succeed. Yes, doesn't matter.
Finally, where can listeners connect with you, work, or follow your insights going forward?
You have my personal email, skrishnanpwc@gmail.com. But I do write weekly on my LinkedIn these days. I've started in last 6 months or so. I've picked up initially the Bhagavad Gita, based on which every fortnight I write an article with a few slokas, how that can be interpreted for a business world. It is not a purest sense of spiritualism, but it gives you a common framework, a professional framework for you to adapt to be a successful professional, be successful in your work. So feel free to drop anytime on the LinkedIn messages. I generally don't use Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and I believe those are like fading memories. So I'm just currently using LinkedIn, and yeah, anybody can drop me an email. Happy to have a chat. And I'm not anymore interested in having a discussion anything outside of philosophy, Vedas, and some bit of profession. No politics, economics, money, etc. That's also part of my satsang these days. I want to stay focused on select areas.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of To the Point. I hope you found today's conversation as insightful and inspiring as I did. A big thank you to our guests for sharing their journey, experiences, and valuable perspectives. If you enjoyed this episode, do follow the series and share it with your colleagues, friends, or anyone who might benefit from these discussions. I am Lalit Mathur, and I look forward to bringing you more conversation with leaders who are shaping the future of business and finance. See you in the next episode. Until then, let us keep it to the point.
Thanks.